It's a shame. I wanted to see the rest of your suit, man. I'm so
Ah,
jealous.
how are we?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing?
Very good now that I've seen you, Vihash. Firstly, I just want to say that you look
Yeah,
you look nice.
you can't think
No,
of an
wait.
adjective.
Why don't you let me finish off the sentence?
I'm just saying, man. Wait, put up your left wrist for a second.
No.
You don't want
I
to
am
show
not going to
that.
put that.
You don't want to show them. You don't want to show them the Rolex.
No, I have no Rolex.
It's
Okay.
trippy.
Okay, I have no Rolex. Okay, how is this angle? Yes, what do you think about this angle? Do you think I look dapper in this angle?
That was so English the way you said dapper.
Yes.
So
I think I look
British.
incredibly sophisticated from this angle.
I believe so as
Okay.
well. I can't do that. All right, sweet. This is a part 2 of something that we recorded ages ago, which is crazy now. But we promised that in this one we'll be talking about the behind the scenes of how you really develop this thing called grit that Duckworth talks about in her book. And I feel like we should have a bit of a conversation here. I know Joseph has put a lot of research into this, and he split this very nicely for us into 3 different segments. And I think it would be better if he introduces this than I do, to be honest.
Okay. Really, without further ado, let's just jump straight into this. Because firstly, as we previously touched on, we're talking a bit about the book that Angela Duckworth has written, right? And that's about grit, okay? And we've previously spoken about how it is that, firstly, what grit is. We've just defined grit, how similar it is to things like discipline.
Yes.
And how things, you have external factors at play towards developing and harnessing your full potential, whether that would be towards academic success, professional success, or career or prospect that you're trying to work towards. There are external factors at play, and of course defined through Barbara Oakley. Oh my gosh, I'm thinking about, when you read so many books, Vihash, okay,
Crazy.
you just the author names is just like it's integrated into your head, especially after doing these pods. My apologies. Angela Duckworth's Equations.
Yes.
And as we previously said, where skill is equivalent to talent multiplied by effort. And bearing that in mind, achievement is equivalent to the amount of effort that you put in multiplied by the skill. Okay.
Yes.
And as we know, effort is counted twice in anything and everything that you do. And these are equations that Angela Duckworth has derived herself. Okay. And especially throughout the first podcast, okay, that we have spoken about, I really feel like we have made an effort to hone the message in. It's one thing to have talent, okay, because you can be just born and have a natural knack to have incredible mental arithmetic, okay?
Yes.
You could have a knack to have that ability to associate an image with a paragraph. You could have, like you have with child actors, right? Child geniuses, their ability to read through a script and say word for word what is on there and not fail or break their character. Or even, in the context of child geniuses, for example, you could essentially have 2 types of children. Either children who are incredibly self-driven and motivated and outside of the parents' control are just intrinsically just wanting to do it. Okay. Or you could have the children who are brought up in a household where study and academia success is bestowed upon you to make sure, like, you need to make sure that you attain those high levels of success in academia. So they kind of put that on you from a very young age, and through strict regime and schedules, you are attaining those high grades through the rigorous timetabling that they kind of put you through. And that's something that we've previously spoken about. But really, without further ado, let's just dive straight into what we are trying to break down here. I've kind of
no, you're good. You're
a bit of waffle here and there, but like it's a bit of context as to what it is that I'm really trying to say, because talent, hard work, that's one thing, okay? Anybody can do that. But how can you develop the necessary tools and instruments to help you in that journey towards aiding in that? So say, for example, developing that grit. Okay, those are the words that I'm trying to get out of my mouth at the moment. Developing that grit, developing that discipline to really harness those goals, to harness that academic success, or whether that would be also as well going towards that job prospect that you've always kind of wanted to do. This is incredibly integral in anything that you do, okay? And I say this because it's divided into these 3 segments, because developing grit is no shortcut. It's no sprint. What is it, Vihush?
A marathon.
And why is that?
Because you need to pace yourself. Steady does it.
Of course, pitfall. But also, to aid in learning and academia success, you need to have these 3 segments, right? These 3 elements. 3 pillars. Okay, perfect. You know, taking the words right out of my mouth there. Perfect, Vihush. I adore you for that. Thank you. I don't know why I said that. Okay, so back to what it is that I was saying. Okay, I have been holding it back for too long. I'm going to just say it now, okay? I have been holding it back for way too long. I'm going to just give it to you. Interest, practice, and purpose, okay? I believe these are the blueprints. These are the blueprints in developing the grit that you need to achieve that level of success that you are trying to attain or work towards, okay? Because as I previously said, it's one thing to work hard. It's one thing to have grit, okay? Because you can have grit, but how do you develop that grit, okay? How do you get from point A to point B? Because people can say, oh yeah, no, all you need to really do is do the Pomodoro technique. You work really, really hard, and then you'll do really, really well at school. Okay, cool, but how? How do you do this? I feel like Angela Duckworth is a really good, kind of lays out the blueprints and infrastructure to really harnessing that productivity, to harnessing the steps that you need to take in order to excel, okay? And let's break this down. Interest, personally, I would say, okay, before I ask you, Vihush, let me just give you a bit of my take on interest. Personally, if you're interested in something, you have to have, I guess, a passion for it. And like we previously said, we have touched on passion. But having an interest towards something allows for, I feel like, this intrinsic motivation towards it.
Yes,
okay?
Yeah.
But as well, interest fuels that kind of ability to want to find answers, okay? Because without interest, you won't have that ability to search for the unknown, okay? So say, for example, myself personally, within A-level, I had a huge interest within physics, and I still do, okay? As someone who studies pharmacy, okay, the area of theoretical physics blows my mind. And I say this because within year 12, I had the great opportunity to go on a trip abroad to Geneva, Switzerland, okay? And I had the opportunity firsthand to see the Large Hadron Collider, okay? The LHC in Geneva. And don't get me wrong, it was spectacular. We had speakers there, you know, they were talking us through the discovery of the God particle, as we know to be the Higgs boson particle. You know, when you're looking really at the subatomic level, there are huge intricacies of math at play. And I would say personally, I'm not the biggest fan of maths, but then again, I enjoy the application of maths, particularly in the context of physics, because it's one thing to kind of throw a ball and do suvat. Okay?
Yeah.
Mechanics, okay, that's one thing. But the realm of theoretical physics, it blows my mind, okay? And although I necessarily didn't have an interest towards mathematics, I had a driving passion and kind of urge to kind of find out those unknown parts of physics. Now, I say unknown parts, you know, I'm throwing out words here and there, left, right, and center, only because when I had the opportunity to see the LHC in person, although I kind of didn't really see it in person, it was more sort of like a museum and a tour guide around the site and whatnot. We didn't actually get to go down and see the Large Hadron Collider, because as we know, it's huge. It's huge in its circumference, because ultimately, at the end of the day, what are they doing? They're colliding these two particles together at incredibly, what is it? Nearly close to the speed of light. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah,
it's huge, and it's to really kind of conceptualize what it is that you're doing in that kind of like, in that scale. It fascinated me. So personally, it dawned upon me to kind of play between that aspect of weighing up my interest. Where did my interest reside? Why did I choose these subjects? And then kind of follow through with that passion into physics. But Joe, why are you studying pharmacy then? Well, that's my ulterior passion. That's my ulterior interest. Okay.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay? I feel like that perfectly answers it, only to some degree. But Viyash, let me ask you this.
You're going to spin that question
I feel like
to me?
You had a dying question to ask me before.
Nah, I didn't. I wanted to branch off of a couple things you said, but I think you put it very nicely. Your little anecdote, that's definitely going to be a short that I'm going to put out.
No.
No, it was nice. I had it all played out in my mind as well when you were talking about your.
No, man, no. I don't think it was as good as what you think it is, man.
Well, but we'll see. We'll see after.
Okay,
we'll see what happens.
12 minutes. How long have I been speaking for? I am sorry, Viyash.
You've been speaking for the past 6-7 minutes, Abira. I just wanted to say, with interest, I think this is like a foundation. It's what you need in order to get somewhere, to achieve something. You're going to need interest, and it's going to have to come into play at some point. Otherwise, I don't think you can just do something over and over again like a robot and get somewhere without liking what it is you're doing. And I know there could be some exceptions to this, and I'm sure there are millions of exceptions to this, but generally speaking, if you're trying to achieve something, if you're trying to get somewhere, if you're trying to learn something new, for instance, then you need to develop some sort of interest towards it. And I previously mentioned that you might not get this interest right from the get-go. And I know this from personal experience, because when I started martial arts, I didn't know what I was doing. I was young. I had no clue what I was doing, why I was punching other people and whatnot, right? The benefit of doing that, blocking, all that, kicking, until I got older and I realized, okay, this is why I should be doing it. And then after that, bear in mind this took a couple years, I started realizing the benefits of it, and that sort of came into play. So I became more passionate about it, and it's gotten me far enough. And with my example, for instance, I didn't really find an interest towards what I was doing until years later, right? So I think this expectation of finding an interest immediately and going with that, I think it's quite unrealistic, which is why I think dipping your toes in a lot of different things, while it is a good thing, you can't just be doing it a tiny bit. You can't be just dipping a toe, to continue with that analogy.
Yeah.
You need to be dipping like a whole leg into it. Give it a bit of, time and effort, and then you might see like some interest come into play.
Right. Okay. With what you've just said, let me ask you this. Do you think it's appropriate? Okay, let's say, I'm in sixth form, okay? I've dwelled on the idea of going into medicine, or I do like the realm of physics. There's so many opportunities right now, right?
Yeah.
What do I do, Viyash? So I'm a young, naive teenager, young adult, okay? Let's put it like that. And I'm about to go into the real world. Either I do 6 years of commitment towards a degree such as medicine, for example, or, there are plenty of other degrees out there, say, for example, dentistry, it's a 5-year commitment.
Yeah.
You're making a huge life-changing decision at the age of 18, right? What would you say to that? Would you recommend people to take a gap year? Would you recommend to go, if you really do have a passion for it, follow through with it? Or would you say do an undergrad, and then if you really do have a passion for medicine, then you should do a postgrad? What's your take on that?
Personally, I feel like when you are around my age and you're still wondering, as I am with myself to a certain degree, I'm not 100% set on medicine, as I said, of course, but it's likely what I'm going to end up doing. I think you have the benefit of doing anything you'd like at this point. I think this is probably the best stage you are to be experimenting, and by that I mean, I know I said it before, but by that I do mean like dipping a whole leg into a lot of stuff, because you don't really have as many commitments to worry about as when you might do when you're much older, for instance. And you realize, okay, if I, like, for instance, if you have, I don't know, if you just finished a medical degree and you want to go into something completely different, like engineering or something, obviously the process, that change in interest, that change is going to be much harder to do when you're older than when it is now, of course. Which is why I think if you experiment by doing things like work experience, or by taking on courses, or just a bit of research, watching videos here and there, talking to people, I think talking is a really good way of learning, having an insight into other people's experiences, then that's already you experimenting, is it not? So there isn't as much stress for you to be able to have your mind set on something immediately from the get-go and just go with that and have like what's known as your dream job. You need to take it steady and not have like this overarching stress or expectation to know what you're doing from when you're like 10 or 11, which is what I'm pretty sure, like, I've heard people say nowadays, like, as soon as you hit 12 or 13, the first question you get asked is, so what do you want to be when you're older, right? Which I know they're just saying it to make light conversation and just to get, you know, the interest going, but if they keep you know, swaying them to do something, then I don't know where I'm really going with this, but you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, I see exactly where you're coming from. Actually, funnily enough, this kind of points me in the direction of why this culture in this country is like, okay, say for example, particularly when you get to my age, right? Okay. Even when I'm at the workplace or even outside of that, I feel like I resort to, or even sometimes others ask me, right? What do you do? What do you do for a living? What do you study? That's really like the opening sentence to anybody introducing themselves to you, or vice versa, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you open yourself in this kind of culture. Okay, say for example, fast forward, Vihash, you're a doctor, you're settled down. Okay, you go and meet someone new. Oh, okay, what do you do for a living, Vihash? Okay, Joe, what do you do for a living? That is such, I feel like, a question which is so integrated into this culture, particularly in this country. In Spain, for example, I believe it's in Spain, they say, what's new? What's new with you? It's a bit of a different spin, you know. It's kind of dwelling on more recent events than what you actually do for a living, because I feel like what you do for a living kind of reflects you as a person, which to some degree does, but it doesn't actually encompass who the person actually really is. And I feel like spinning it on its head like that. So say, for example, what's new with you, Vihash? How have you been this week? You know, what's that recent achievement that's kind of like, you know, that you kind of want to tell them, you know?
And I think it's a bit more personalized, isn't it? So it's more centered around yourself as an individual rather than, I guess it's like your achievement. So if for example, I were to answer your initial question, hypothetically, I'm like, I'm a millionaire, I've got a multi-million dollar business or pound business or whatever, compared to me saying something like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing, I'm not really getting a high-paid job, whatnot, then that person you're speaking to has two different impressions about you, and they use that to judge you almost, and it influences their following decisions about how they interact with you, how they address you, whatnot. Whereas
prejudice,
I think, exactly. Whereas
pre-judgment.
The question you said before, which is what's new, that seems like it's more centered around you as an individual, and not really, you can't really get a judgment from that. You see what I mean? It's more like a lighthearted conversation. It encompasses different aspects, because anything could have happened to you that's new,
exactly,
and it leads you down a good pathway that you can't really derive a lot of prejudice from, can you?
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's I don't know. It's difficult to say because the culture in this country is slightly different. You know, what do you do for a living? It's very straightforward. It's very straight to the point.
Yeah.
I don't know, but okay. Bit of a backtrack. Okay. Back to what it is that we're talking about. Okay. I feel like say if I asked myself the question that I just asked you, right, Viharsh, about, you know, seeing what your interests really are with respect to jumping towards a huge lifelong commitment, really.
Yes.
I would, to some degree, urge people to possibly even take a gap year and work within the field, understand what it is that they're really getting themselves involved in. Because
Fair enough, yeah.
I think now more than ever before, the strain that the NHS is under is huge. Okay, we have consultants striking, junior doctors striking. You know, so many different strikes going on at all sorts of different times of the year, right? With the amount that this has costed the NHS, they could have just increased their pay, right? I think it's cost the NHS over £1 billion. Okay.
Oh, wow.
And given that, they could have just accepted the 30% pay increase, which is what doctors were asking in the first place, but only gave them, I can't remember, but I think it was an absolutely minuscule
I think it was a
minuscule pay increase. I think it was between 8 to 10%. I can't remember from the top of my head exactly.
Yeah, I was about to say 8%. I thought it might have been 8%.
To really put that into context, just understand, like, the amount that it has costed the NHS for healthcare professionals like these doctors, junior doctors, consultants to go on strike. They could have just given them the pay rise that they'd asked for in the first place. It really just kind of just shows, you know, the kind of state our healthcare system is currently in. And you know, having that understanding and awareness, particularly when you're about to make one of the biggest decisions of your life, really understand not only in that regard, but how competitive medicine gets once you've graduated.
Yes.
Because if you are trying to get into a competitive specialty, understand that you have to put a lot of hours and a lot of effort at play, and you are sacrificing a lot of your free time. Once you've graduated medical school, you are really working towards that specialty, you know, that you're trying to attain. Let me put it to you like this, Viharsh. Interest, okay? It's really difficult to strike a balance between a full-time job and actually enjoying what you do day in, day out. And, you know, really epitomizing, like, say, for example, if I'm a community pharmacist and I'm working day in, day out, okay? Although it's my passion to help people, to do it 6 days straight, 12 hours a day or 10 hours a day, doing the same thing over and over again, it gets slightly repetitive to some degree, okay? And I tell you this because working in community pharmacy, there is this element of slight repetition. Although you can have the odd cases here and there, I feel like it just becomes quite innate and to some degree quite repetitive. But as well as this, if I had the opportunity, and if money was not a factor, right? If I had the opportunity to work 3 days a week, for example, I feel like I would love my job more because of that. Because I didn't have to think of it being, you know, the breadwinner in this case. Because I am making money out of my job to support myself. But if I was stabilized through, you know, a different revenue of income, for example, that job, I feel like I would have more passion for, my performance would increase, my overall attitude and happiness towards everything that I do, particularly while I'm at work, would increase dramatically. And in turn, because of that, the quality outcome. So I guess the patient outcome. But what do you think?
I agree with what you're. That's crazy, man.
Do you know what? Let me put it to you like this. We have kind of dwelled upon, you know, occupation, that sort of thing. You know, people going off into possibly the biggest decision that they'll ever make in their lives, like studying like a degree, like medicine, like dentistry. Go on, you got an absolute revelation right there. I was about to go off on a tangent, but you saved me.
No, sorry, I just remembered what I was gonna say. You mentioned monotony. Is that a word? Monotony with an N, not
Yes.
an M. Of you working in community pharmacy, right? But I worked in a GP, and it was like an office job, reception variation as well. But I feel like initially, of course, it was exciting because it's my first job, right? Of course, it's gonna be exciting.
Yeah.
But then I worked over summer, and I soon started to feel like I started to understand the workplace, the politics of it all, what they were getting me to do and everything. I enjoyed it. Good experience. Signed me up to a couple courses, really beneficial as well.
Wow.
Patient interaction, great patient interaction. Not a single bad case, so I can't say anything bad about that. Yeah, no, it was amazing.
And you worked in a GP?
Yeah.
Not a single bad interaction with a patient. That's a lie. No way.
No. Yeah, no. I was quite shocked, but I'm grateful for it. Of course,
I'm shocked.
It was a really good. It was good.
What have you even just said? I can't even. I'm still processing what you've just said.
I think it's probably because they sensed that I was a newbie there, so they were like,
we'll let they didn't give you the.
I mean, I saw like patient interaction between other receptionists and administrators a bit shaky, In fact, I think I probably told you. Look, actually, I'll leave that story for another day. But anyway, my point was that I tried to squeeze out all of the interest, if you know what I mean. So I tried to find the little tasks, try to make them enjoyable as well. And I'd have how do I say it? I'd regularly move between each and every task. So I might go from like printing to calling patients, or to like I'm trying to think, writing up codes into the system, or doing a bit of the course, anything like that, or even refining my notes. Because bear in mind, throughout this whole thing, I kept tabs on what it was I was doing and made notes on all the experiences, interactions, whatnot, and what it was I was learning, so I could reference it in the future. But anyway, I'm going on a bit of a tangent. I was just trying to say that with all of these tasks that you're doing, you need to be able to find interest in what it is you're doing, so that you're able to appreciate it much more, right? If I didn't find enjoyment in the small tasks that I was doing, then I probably wouldn't appreciate it now than I did before, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's all I wanted to say. Go off on that point, but I think we've talked a lot about interest. We move on to practice now. Seishu, way too much. Half an hour. That's crazy.
Oh, that is crazy. Very heavy in what we've just said. I feel like we've given a bit of an underlying interest as to why it is that we kind of followed through in the passions that we kind of said. But I feel like I've touched on physics, but I didn't really touch on chemistry, because I felt like that was a driving passion towards my pharmacy pursuit.
Please.
But I'm gonna leave it for another time. You guys are gem for another
do that
time. All right, because let me tell you something right now, guys. Practice, and as we know, Vihash, what does that mean?
That means every day. You know those montages you see on.
I was hoping that you'd say perfect. I don't know why you're talking about montage. All I wanted you to say.
Perfect.
Perfect, man. Well, what is this montage? Okay, you might as well finish what you're saying.
No, that's right. You carry on. I'll say it later.
I want to hear what you're gonna say.
I'll say it later.
Okay, all right, okay. But as we know, guys, practice makes perfect. Practice. Practice even more. Practice perfect. Okay, perfect. Cool. All right. Cool. Okay. I don't know why I've just done that. Okay. Anyway, back to what it is I was saying. Okay. And I say this because grit paragons have a persistent desire to do better. All right. And according to Angela Duckworth, and as well as research, okay, have you heard about the 10,000 hour rule, Vihash? This is if you invest 10,000 hours into a sport, a form of academia, you are going to reach the height of that specific area. Okay, that's really the ability to reach that kind of expert level status. Okay, and as we know, it takes 10,000 years and over 10 years to reach that kind of level. But you have to practice, okay? Because without practice, how on earth are you going to reach that expert level? Viharsh, let me ask you that. Okay, what does practice mean to you?
I mean, when I think of practice, wait, is this the bit where I say perfect or not?
No. Just tell
okay.
me genuinely what you think practice means to you.
Okay. It's a very vague word, and I think we hear it all the time, right? Practice. But what does it? What does it look like? It's a good question. It does not, in my opinion, it does not look like what they show on media, and this is the point I was trying to get across. Before I was rudely interrupted, and that was that when whatever we see on the media of like all these montages of people doing like, you know, they play the 3-minute song and they show like 50 days of hard work all in 3 minutes, very unrealistic, and it sets these very unrealistic expectations of what it is that you can achieve in 3 minutes, right? And I think that practice is more about small, you're spending a small amount of time regularly, consistently, and efficiently, and by that I mean you're doing something that's actually worth it. So I'm going to go to this example of not doing, like, for instance, if you're trying to revise for maths, right, and you're practicing questions, I remember you saying that you shouldn't practice all the easy questions, what you know already. You don't practice that. The whole point of practicing is to practice. The point of practicing is to be able to iron out all of the things you don't know and the things you can't do at this point. So if I go to that example I said of the maths problem, when you're doing the practice, you should be focusing on the areas that you haven't touched on as much and you're not very confident about, because that's the way you're going to see the results, right? If you keep just doing the things you're good at, you'll be absolutely amazing at that. Yeah, sure. But then when you're faced with something that you don't know, you're going to like just completely go down, plateau, and you're not going to be able to overcome that, right? So 100%. I think practice is going to have to you have to be smart with how you go about practicing and what it is you specifically practice. So Joseph, what do you think practicing, and if you could give us like a bit of a personal anecdote on what you've practiced in the past and what that actually looked like?
I would say firstly, when it comes to practice, particularly while I was at pharmacy school, while I'm at pharmacy school, it's so integral to get that work experience in, because it's such an interventional aspect of pharmacy where you are effectively able to counsel patients on medications, knowing that you have the confidence behind the knowledge that you have, whether that would be, you know, behind warfarin, for example, and they would ask you about INR. What does that mean? What does a low INR score mean? What does a high INR score mean? And then being able to distinguish between the two, and knowing that you have a high bleeding risk in some scenarios where you have a high score, and in low scores you have a higher ability for you to develop a clot, okay, the coagulability of blood in that case. And as well as this, you have to understand prothrombin times and, you know, so on and so forth. I can speak about this all day, but this kind of boils down to what medications that you're able to effectively counsel on, and that confidence and that ability to do so only comes from experience. Okay, now bear with me here. What I'm saying is fairly long-winded, but I have reasonable justification as to what it is that I'm trying to say. Because when you are working within a pharmacy setting, whether that would be community pharmacy or whether that be in hospital pharmacy, part-time as a student, you are continually getting that feedback and response, whether that would be from your colleagues, your peers, your supervisor, who is closely listening to you when you are delivering that advice. And although you may have, you know, come across with the information appropriately, there might have been things that you have or could have done better in that process. And that's what I mean. That's exactly what I mean. Receiving feedback in anything that you do, any practice that you have, because I can continue to practice working community pharmacy day in, day out, okay? But it's that ability to utilize and harness that knowledge from pharmacy school that I'm continually developing and adding on to, but also adding that kind of interventional aspect, and that's what I like to call it interventional, because you are intervening. You are intervening in the patient's well-being, their safety. You are trying to look out for the best interest for the patient, because ultimately you want the best outcomes. Okay, you want to make sure that the patient is well, recovers. You want to make sure that any advice that you give is appropriate, is within these kind of parameters. Okay, so back to what it is I was saying. Practice makes perfect. In order to develop a skill in anything that you do, particularly when it comes to pharmacy school and that kind of like ability to get that work experience in, okay? Because I'm continually getting work experience. Even in my final year, I'm working 2 days a week, because to me, currently, to do well in this exam, what's known as an OSCE examination, right? They can give you any scenario, okay? And really, nothing can prepare you more towards that than actually being in a real life OSCE situation.
Yes.
Dealing with patients firsthand, and having that ability. Say if a patient comes to you with a query and they are on so and so different types of medication and they are having, constant diarrhea, which is a different type. What do you do? These are okay. That is a really very niche, obscure scenario that I've just given to you. You might not have that as an OSCE scenario, and most likely I won't have that. But it's just such a random situation that you could have within the pharmacy, and the ability to kind of critically dissect that situation. If you are confident enough, you could possibly, resolve that situation yourself and find a solution to that. Or if not, you could have a chat with the pharmacist and have a conversation with them about the ideas and the interventions that you want to kind of take or kind of give to the patient, the advice that you want to give. They will verify that, and then you will then go towards, giving that advice that you had kind of already had to say or wanted to say, but you didn't want to say it just because, you wanted to make sure that you were looking out for the best interests of the patient. So you wanted to verify what you knew before you said it. Okay. And I say this because having that ability to continually practice that particular segment and then get that feedback and get that understanding from that qualified supervisor, that pharmacist, it adds on to it. Okay. Because it's so integral, practicing towards these exams, these OSCE examinations, because they can put you in any sort of situation. So really being able to repeat that process over and over again. And as I said, although community pharmacy might be quite repetitive, it helps you in so many different ways while you're in pharmacy school. Okay. You have that ability to get feedback. You have that ability to work on your craft continuously. And, it has helped me so much attain that high level grade within third year, achieving that first class grade. And I hope to, of course, achieve that within my fourth and final year as well. That is why I'm working 2 days a week, because I feel like it's only going to help me. I'm not driven by money. I have no financial interests. Okay. I am purely driven by the experience that I gain from everything that I do within community pharmacy. That is why I am pursuing 2 days a week of work. Now, I've said that multiple different times, but I'm really just trying to hone to you the magnitude of what I'm trying to express. OSCEs are no joke. They can throw you in the deep end, and you kind of really have to you have to take a step back. You have to look at the situation holistically. Like with you, having a patient that comes in, they give you their presenting symptoms. You need to ask the right questions. You need to, make the conversation flow, but also you don't want to repeat yourself, okay? Because there will be a multitude of situations that you would have gone through in the past. And it's going to be another day in the office when you go into the OSCE. Because you're going to sit down. You're going to be like, because I know all the answers. Okay. Not exactly like that, but you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I just wanted to hop in there. The clinical aspect of it, right? All the patient interaction, the realistic experience that you as a pharmacist and let's say a doctor or healthcare professional, all of that clinical stuff is vital. Like I feel like you can be really smart, have all the anatomical knowledge, and all the medicines, the drugs inside out. But if you're not able to, have that, what they call empathy and all of these pillars that I think doctors iterate thousands of times, if you don't have any of that, then there's really no point in being able to do this, which I which is why I completely agree with you when you say you need that experience, that work experience, working as what it is you want to become in the future. Because if you don't have that, then you're not going to know what is required for you to do what it is you love doing. And I feel like I've mentioned this previously as well, but I have a friend who is also a pharmacist. She was fully qualified, and she told me that she had a lot of like graduate or freshly graduated med students who came into her clinic for some work experience, right? And she said all of these students were like completely brainy. They knew all the, like I already said, the medicines inside out, all the diseases, whatnot. They knew all of those things inside out. They were able to diagnose an issue, pinpoint accuracy and whatnot, and give a relevant treatment. But then when they tried to essentially explain it to whoever it is they were explaining to, so the patients, for instance, or just generally their patient interaction was not what she expected, and not in a good way. So like you said, with relevance to this, you need to be able to practice what it is you learn in a realistic surrounding, and this goes back to what I was saying, in that you need to be smart with how you go about putting into practice what it is you've learned. And I think this whole application of what you're learning in these realistic scenarios is essential to mastering anything, right? I find it helps me a lot, and I found that it helps other people understand as well. So for instance, if I'm teaching a concept, namely in karate, for instance, I try my best to try and give real life applications right from the get-go, so that they understand how a certain, block is, for instance. It's the best example I can think of. Or if I'm trying to, for instance, teach someone else a concept in a subject, the first thing I try to go about is to do a relevant comparison to something they understand every single day, because that application process is what makes you understand what it is you're learning the most. And I know I've sort of like deviated a bit, but I think it's essential to apply what is to a real life situation, because I think that's the best way you want to learn. So so with what you're saying, working those 2 days a week, I think it's, as I'm sure you'd agree, it's 100% worth it, because you've got that edge now when it comes to your exams.
Exactly. But as well as this, a bit of a summary as to what we kind of said about practice. It's been very long-winded, but really just going back to what we've kind of said, setting a stretch goal and zeroing in on just one narrow aspect of the overall performance. So say in the context of while I'm at pharmacy school, the whole point of me wanting to work part-time, I don't kind of classify as working part-time. I like to think of it as placement and applying the knowledge that I have from pharmacy school into every situation that I have within the community pharmacy, and zeroing on that particular narrow, realm or kind of skill that I want to develop further would be the OSCE, the ability to effectively counsel and consult a patient, deal with queries confidently, and kind of have that level of competency. Okay? Because knowing what you're doing is integral, because you don't want to be a headless chicken running around a pharmacy just picking up phones, doing this, dispensing, because you're going to make mistakes. You have patient lives at risk, ultimately. So you want to be making sure day in, day out, you are making the right decisions. You have the confidence and level of competency, and as well as that, you have that knowledge to effectively counsel that patient on their medications or whatever kind of query that they have towards you. You are equipped with the tools and the arsenal of equipment to resolve it in any way that you can. But moving on from that, hungrily seeking feedback on how they did or what they did as soon as possible. That's another thing. In any way that you kind of want to achieve that level of competency, skill that you're trying to develop, because I'm sure, likewise with you, Vihush, karate is integral that you get feedback in anything that you do, katas that you do, that level of expression how sharp and strong you need to be with each and every move that you have. Because personally, VS has spoken a lot about karate, because I haven't really touched on it myself, but I'm actually a second dan black belt in Wadurai karate, and I have failed to address this, and it's been a long while coming, but I'm glad that I've addressed it now, because when I hear Vihash speak about karate, it's music to my ears. But I think
it's funny because it's the only example I can think of, really.
Yeah, but listen, really, without a shadow of a doubt, I think you can agree with me when I say this, hand on heart. Repeating the process over and over again is so integral, and it pertains to, I think, whether that would be academia, so on and so forth. I think karate, it's just so integral that you're making sure that you know katas through and through, the fluency, the level of confidence that you're kind of exhibiting. But moving on from this, because I feel like we've kind of hit the nail with the hammer straight on the head.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it alright if I just chip in? Because I know we have been going on for a while, and before we end, we can quickly talk about purpose, the last segment of this. But just before we do that, I just wanted to say, when you do go off and start practicing whatever it is you're practicing, right? You initially, and I think we touched on this briefly, you're initially going to get signs that you would take as failure, essentially, and you might get frustrated really easily. So you might, for instance, best example I can think of is probably gym, right? If you initially, you don't really see that progress initially, and you get put down by it, and you think, oh, I'm doing something wrong, or it's not working, I've been training this muscle group for weeks now, I'm seeing zero progress. And I'm sure it's happened to almost everyone who goes to gym regularly, as I'm sure with yourself, Joseph. But it's not necessarily a sign that everything's going wrong. It's like when you see practice in action, you can't expect it to just immediately exponentiate in terms of progress and achievement, right? You need to be a bit patient with what it is you're doing, and understand that the process will get you there eventually, and you can't get frustrated and quit, which is, I think, what a lot of people might tend to do as soon as they see a sign that something's not going right, which I guess is where they get the saying, trust the process. But I just wanted to add that in before we move on to purpose.
No, that was a good take. No, thank you for that, Vihash.
Very welcome.
But really, you're very welcome. But really, without further ado, let's just dive straight into purpose. Vihash, what does purpose mean to you? Is it a calling? Is it a gut instinct? What is it?
Purpose. I had a little chat with you because the definition you put of purpose was absolute waffle, and I have no clue what you meant by it. My definition of purpose is to, I think I see it as like you it's a reason it's the why of everything you're doing. It's the why of everything you're doing. You need to see the reason behind a little task that you're doing. It's the end goal of any path you embark on, to be very pristine. And I think that without purpose, you can't really go about doing anything for that matter. So you need to be able to know the why before you start doing anything. And I did, this kind of goes against with what I was saying in terms of martial arts, but I didn't really know the why until ages, right? But bear that in mind, of course, at a young age, you're not really going to know the answer to a lot of these questions, but it's helpful to know the why right from the get-go, so you have a purpose and you have like an end goal to reach, right? You want to know why it is you're wasting 5 hours a day doing so and so. You need to know what the achievement is that you're going to get, what you're going to get out of it at the end of the day. So that's how I see purpose as a whole when it comes to discipline and doing and practicing something every single day.
It's very good.
Is it?
And I say that because I like to think of purpose as a calling. Something that brings you towards or gets you closer towards that achievement or really large goal that you're kind of working towards, right? Yeah.
Yes.
It's kind of,
yeah.
I feel like I like to put purpose in the context of it being a metaphor, right? It's magnetized. You are continuously being pulled in the direction of what your calling is, what your gut instinct is telling you day in, day out to do. But then again, going back on that, you know that voice that you have in your mind when you're waking up really, really early in the morning? I can't do this today. I'll give up.
Oh my days. That was me this morning.
Tell me about it, man. It's that voice that you have. Everybody has this voice, okay? Okay, I like to call it negative Nancy, okay? It's this voice at the back of my head that's telling me to just give up. Why are you going to work? Why are you torturing yourself? You know, but then after like 15 minutes, you're fine, right? It's okay. It's a phase that passes. But I feel like overcoming these challenges, okay? And I say these challenges because we all have incredibly busy lives, but it's about how we use what we do day to day to our advantage, right? So me going to work these 2 days a week, right? Although I find it challenging to wake up in the mornings, I am glad that I went to work today. I had a really good day at work. I was able to counsel patients on all sorts of different things. I was able to carry out certain services as well, DMS, discharge medication service, under the supervision of a pharmacist, of course. Angela Duckworth does a really good job in resonating what I'm about to say, really, which is most people first become attracted to things that they enjoy and only later appreciate how these personal interests might benefit others. Okay, not only to yourself, but that could possibly have an impact towards, the patient population, the real impact that you could have. And what you're learning right now, whether that would be through academia, whether that would be through pharmacy school, through medical school, the true impact that you can have outside of this scope. Okay, I think that resonates a lot. But as well as this, slightly outside of that, more holistically, right? Purpose. Humans have been evolved, right? They have been evolved to seek meaning and purpose. Okay, so as I've said, humans have evolved to seek meaning and purpose, and that could mean many different things. But we seek challenge. Without challenge, there's no push, there's no drive. Okay, so I feel like it's a challenge for me to put myself in a position to work and study at the same time. Okay, and although people might be against working while you're at university, I feel like it's only going to be an asset to you if you're working within the field that you are going to go into, because everything that I do at work is only going to benefit me. So that challenge that I have to wake up day in, day out, no, not day in, day out, just those 2 days, it's kind of putting me in that forefront of developing those skills that I have at bay.
Yeah.
But even beyond that, grittier people are dramatically more motivated than others to seek a meaningful and other-centered life. Now, say what you mean by that, but I think that really resonates with me. But as well as this, there's another really big thing that I really want to kind of read out, Vihesh, if you're right, if you're happy for me to do so. Is that right?
Of course.
Most gritty people see their ultimate aims as deeply connected to the world beyond themselves. Okay? And I'm going to say 3 things out of this that kind of really resonate towards me, particularly. And then you let me know whether you agree with me or not, or whether there's something that you resonate more strongly with. Purpose is a tremendously powerful source of motivation. What do you think about that?
Purpose is a tremendously powerful source of motivation. I completely agree with that. Probably one of the most important.
And I think without a shadow of a doubt, without having purpose, meaning, intention, you're not going to have that drive, motivation. You're not going to lack the interest. And ultimately, how are you going to practice without interest? And I think all of these coincide and culminate towards this bigger thing that we have that's going on here. Developing grit, right? How do we develop grit? We need to first have that interest. We need to have that practice, and we need to have purpose. But without one, you can't have the other. Without purpose, I guess you can have some degree of interest, but you're not going to be entirely interested behind what you're trying to get behind. So if I want to be a pharmacist, right? My purpose would be to become a pharmacist, but my interest would rely in the pharmacology of medications, how they work, how it is that I can effectively counsel a patient, and how I can, impact their life. And practice. That practice only comes through, that interest that I have towards that subject. And ultimately, if we round it off, purpose. That ulterior motive of why you're doing what you're doing. And you're not just doing it for the sake of doing it. Because, as I've said, I feel like I'm repeating myself now, but like, without one, you can't have the other. And I think purpose goes such a long way in resonating this message that that calling, that gut instinct that each and every single one of us have. Although like this, guys, okay? I know there's going to be some kids out here that's going to be watching this podcast right now. You guys are going to have no idea what you want to do in life, okay? Give it time. The more experiences and, the kind of situations that you are put through, you will eventually find your ulterior purpose, the meaning to kind of where you want to kind of go in, the direction that you kind of want to follow through in, right? Because really without that, there's no direction in where you're going. Because I feel like with purpose, there is only one direction that you can go in, and that's only up.
Well, okay, fine. If you're so keen on it, I believe, I think we've covered quite too much in this topic of grit. I mean, clearly by this timestamp, we've covered too much. Interest is, we said at the beginning, it's necessary for you to have an interest. It's like a foundation. You need. I just can't see how you can't be interested in something that you are doing over and over again. You need to develop it in one way or another, right? So that goes without saying. But purpose, I think, is an even bigger, because you need to know the why. And I try to let people know the why when I try to teach something, for instance. And I think if you know the why, which is the purpose essentially, then the practice will become much easier because you know why you're doing it, and your interest will develop over time much quicker as well, because you know why you're doing it. Okay, so like you said, they all come together, they all meet in the center, and they're all interest, practice, and purpose, all the three pillars of what you need to stick with something, discipline, grit, what you need to achieve something. So you said it very nicely, and I think throughout this episode we managed to intertwine our experiences, our interests, and
beautifully.
I'm hoping it wasn't too boring.
No, hopefully not. But without a shadow of a doubt, guys, to put it simply, as Vihash said, I think you put it beautifully, Vihash. I couldn't have said it any better, to be honest. Short, sweet, and simple. Nothing like what I've just said. Very long-winded, very waffly, but let me just tell you this, guys. Let me just leave it short, sweet, and simple, just like the person Vihash is.
I'm sure.
No. He's actually taller than me, so let me just tell you that, guys.
I'm not taller. Okay, I'm not taller. Let's not get into this. All right.
Let me just round it off, okay? So, from my perspective, I just want to quickly just say this. One sec. It's coming to me. One sec. Seriously, just 1 sec.
Take your time.
Interest, practice, and purpose. These are the three pillars which are integral towards any form of success in life. Okay? Particularly pertaining to...
No. We're not... I'm sorry. I'm cutting you off. No, look, mate. I'm cutting you off there because that's word for word exactly what I just said like 2 minutes ago.
Okay, let me say something.
You could have done.
No, I've seriously got something better to say. I gotta say.
Well, hurry up.
Okay. Interest, practice, and purpose.
Days.
Okay.
Okay.
These culminate towards really how to develop grit, how to develop discipline.
No, I'm not including that either.
Why not?
Can we just end this thing? Because you've said the same thing that I just said.
No, you didn't say culminate. You didn't say develop grit.
Oh my days. Doesn't matter. You can't be repeating yourself. You said it yourself.
Oh, yeah,
no repeating.
I did. Yeah. Okay. Do you want to round it off? Shall I round it off?
Yes. Goodbye.
Huh?